think I have something, loved ones, that's useful. So it's Ephesians chapter 6. We're at Ephesians chapter 6, and we've reached, I believe, verse 10. Ephesians 6 and 10. Finally, to loipu, as the Greek, and can mean for the rest. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. And when you use the Greek, of course, it's the emphasis is so strong, because the Greek for the verb there, be strong, it's the passive imperative of dunamis. En dunasthai, yeah. And you remember dunamis was what in fact we call it, I don't know if we call our present charity dunamis, but we do. And we had the magazine, you remember, in the old days in Minneapolis called Dunamis. And I chose it because dunamis, of course, it's obviously dynamite, but dunamis is power. Of course, you shall receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you. And that you remember, indeed, we had on the Dunamis magazine, we had that picture that some guy had sketched of an ordinary country scene down here, and then up above was heavenly places, where all the battles were going on. And it brought home to you that there was mighty power involved in your life down here. And that's what dunamis has behind it. And endunamisthai is the verb. And he's almost saying, be dynamited, Be endued with dynamite. Be taken over by dynamite. And that's the kind of thrust it is. It's not, it comes over weakly to us as be strong in the Lord, But he's saying, be blown apart or be blown beyond your own powers by God himself, Finally, be strong in the Lord. And what came home to me was what the physicists are all saying. I mean, it's unbelievable, It's as if they've joined the enemy, because they're all saying, of course, you're not as solid as you look. They're saying, all the fuss about the boson particle, it's because that's what they're saying. They're saying this whole thing is made up of particles, tiny, tiny particles that we cannot even see with the naked eye. And the hunt for the boson is it's a particle of particles, We started off with the atom, and then we got the protons and the neutrons, and then now we've got all kinds of particles. And what they're saying is, you're not as solid as you look. And I think that's the lie and the deception that we have sunk into. And I was thinking of you, actually, in the shop, too, in the store. Why do we go in, and you probably would say, oh, not me, I'm shaking in my shoes. But why do we go in our own strength? Because, of course, our own strength is the only thing that will shake. And I think often it's what you do, what we all do. We go into that shop in our own strength. And if you say to me, why do we? Because we are absolutely sure that this is me, and I am solid, and this is my body, and I'm responsible for this body, and I control this body. And even the dear physicists are saying, no, you're not. We can't explain what is holding all those particles together. But you, each one of you, and each one of us physicists, we're bundles of little whirling little particles that are spinning round each other like crazy. And they are held, we do not know how they are held together. But that's what you are. And it's wrong to think of yourself as a solid piece of matter. Matter itself is made up of billions upon billions of these little particles that spin round one another and hold this shape. Now, do you see what that means? That means as I walk across here, our God has billions of little particles. How many billion are in just that nail? And he's moving them all through the air. And when I turn around and go back, he's moving them all, keeping them in the shape of this earnest O'Neill. And he's doing that with you. And that's why it is so true when Colossians 1:15 says, he is the express image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For all things were created in him, and all things hold together in him. And that's what we are. But you can see the ridiculous lie that we are all absolutely certain about. You know, I know you're struggling even now as I say these things. You can see the logic of it, but you're struggling. Could it be? Could that be? Could the physicists be right? Could that be the situation? Because, you know, we are absolutely sure. As arrogant as anybody could be. As ignorant and arrogant as anybody could be. You know, we here in this room, of course the thousands of others are the same. But we are absolutely convinced. No. That's a nice thought, what you're saying. It sounds good, but you know physicists, they'll find out it's wrong. Yes, I understand the bit about us holding together in Jesus, and that's probably not wrong, but it's nothing like as crazy as you're saying. I mean, how could anybody, how could God keep, there are 7 billion of us, you know, now, almost 7 billion in the world. How could he keep 7 billion of us in space like that and move us through space whenever we wanted to move? And I think that's the battle, you know. I think that's the weight that that's the weight that all of us, not just you going into the shop or the store, all of us, that's the weight we go with. We're absolutely certain that the only strength we have to depend on is what we have and what we feel here. And the only thing I have going for me is what my mind can think. And the only thing I have going for me is what my body can do. And we are just, you don't need me to tell you. You know that's the way we think. And so, when this book talks about Jesus being in us, we do our best, you know. We do our best. We think, oh, that's a nice metaphor, the idea of Jesus being in us. That's nice, and I'm sure you're right in some way. It's a nice way to think about it. It certainly helps me to think that maybe there is some power in me that is. I mean, you almost shake in fear when you go on with the sentence. Because what we talked about is what is true. We exist by the continued work of our dear Father. we move around in this room because he is holding us together in his Son. And so when Paul says, be strong in the Lord and be filled with the power and the strength and the dynamite of God's own strength, he's just telling it like it is. He's just saying that's what it is. And what you're doing is you're living in a deception. You're living in an imaginary material thing you regard as your own body. And you're living in that as if there's some reality to that, as if there's some solidity to that, as if that has some strength or life of its own. And you're trusting in that strength and life, which is non-existent. So no wonder you're nervous. No wonder you're shaking. No wonder you're tentative. Because you're believing in a lie, a thing that does not exist. You yourself are held together by your dear Father in heaven. And the strength that you have experience of is a little of the huge strength that he has in you, holding you together. So in reality, we are walking miracles. And when Jesus walked through the walls, it was just a natural ability that God has given to our existence. He can speed up the particles. He can make them merge with other particles. He can get them to go through other particles. I mean, it's when you get into the quantum thing, it is really amazing, the way they show that when you shoot a beam of light, at a hole in something, then it splits into different ways, and some of them go through it and some of them don't. And the behavior of the particles is almost uncanny and unpredictable in many ways. And of course our Father controls every particle. I don't know if you've ever thought of it. Do you think he knows the way every wave is going to curl? All the waves that are curling in different ways in different places. Do you think he knows how it's going to curl? If you hesitate, let me put this to you. I wonder who does. I wonder who does. Or are they just curling by chance? So our dear Lord has put us inside bodies and minds that are absolutely dependent on his moment by moment strength and guidance. And that's why when this dear fellow says, be strong in the Lord, and he keeps on, if you look at it, finally, brethren, be strong in the Lord, and then he keeps on, and in the strength, and it's ischus, Greek, and it means might or power. I looked them up just because they're so redundant in a way. Krata is the word for strength, and it means vigor and forcefulness. Forcefulness. And I did think of that in connection again, because I'm concerned with the things you all are concerned with. And of course I'm concerned about how you feel when you go into a store and all that sort of thing. But it came home to me again that here's Paul saying, be strong in the Lord, be filled with the dynamite of God, and be filled in the forcefulness of his nature and his character. And that's why I'm not a fight the good fight man, but I asked Joanne later on to play Fight the Good Fight, Because it seems to me there's a forcefulness that God has, a forcefulness that Christ himself showed in his attitude to evil spirits and his attitude to sickness and death itself. And there's a forcefulness that God has built into us that we are meant to take and run with. And we're meant to go strongly and firmly into the store. And my name is Marty Overby, and I am with a jewelry company called Nicole Bar. And there's a forcefulness and a strength and a solidity that God has for each one of us. That is our right, which I don't think we can produce for ourselves. I do not, in 1,000 ways, I'm not to be imitated at all. But in that way, I know the last place that I would dream of being as a little Belfast guy was standing on a sloped stage in a dance theatre talking to a crowd of wild 60s kids from the university. And there was only one way to go there. Only one way. And you couldn't have notes with you. You had to know it all. And I had to be able to stand out there whether I could ever get back to my notes behind the stage or not. There's a forcefulness that God gives us and a strength that is in us, that is there. He has put it in us. It's not something we have to grab. It's not something we have to produce. It's in us. Be strong in the Lord. Be what you are. You are there with the forcefulness of Christ within you. Be that and take hold of the thing. And so there is a real sense, it seems to me, in Paul's words here, that we are intended by God to do all that he can do. All that he can do. All that he himself can do. Because he is the one that holds you together. It is his life and energy that keeps you in existence. And I think that's the heart of the problem, you know. We think we've made ourselves. We do. We just think we've made ourselves. We know our mums, you know, had something to do with it, but we think that all that talk that you say about us existing in Jesus is okay, but actually I'm just a little animal here and I exist on my own. We can't explain how we ever came to be and all that sort of thing without God, but we take it over from him. We take it out of his hands. We assume to ourselves our own self-existence, and we behave that way, and therefore we get all the worry and anxiety that brings us. Because it's untenable. The idea is untenable that you are a little speck that nobody can see, and you're on a sphere that is whirling around in space, flying round in orbits round other planets. That thought is untenable without driving you crazy. I mean, that's ridiculous. If that's the situation, we should commit suicide now, because that's hopeless. To be a little speck, smaller than what you can see, stuck on a sphere that is flying through space at hundreds and thousands of miles an hour. And of course, the truth is that is not the situation. The whole thing is held together by our dear Father. You're renting your body. That's it. You're renting your body. I mean, I agree with you. There is a real you and a real me. God has given us a real self-consciousness. And he has created a real being in here. But that being is inside, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. And This outside layer is the one we happen to see at this moment. And in a few years, we will have a different one, a glorious body, like unto the glorious body of Jesus Christ. And we'll have a body, and we'll be able to recognize one another, but we'll be transformed. It'll be a different kind of body. So God has made the whole thing and is in control of it. And it's not ours. It's just where we ourselves, we're the person who is Trish Overby, the part of Jesus that lives as Trish Overby. The part of Jesus that lives as Martha Nilsson. That part exists inside all these whirling particles. And so all the particles have all the strength of God himself. And that's why he says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Because actually your whole existence is dependent on Christ's continued love and life that he's feeding into you. And so when he says, be strong in the Lord and the strength of his might, and he's talking about strength and might that is greater than what we know, he means what he says. Be what you are. You're part of Christ. He is the one who has given you all that you have. And he will continue to give you all that you have. So, we're renting a body. That's it. It's not ours. We don't own it. We're renting it. And it will do. And that's what, in a clumsy way I was trying to get at on Saturday. We can do whatever we need to do. That's it. We can do whatever we need to do. He is not a cruel God. He does not put us into a situation where we can't do what needs to be done. He doesn't do that. The whole of creation exhibits a God who is intelligent and who produces causes and results that fit one another. So there is nothing that he has given us to do that we can't do. And I don't think it's done. I don't think it's done by gathering up our own human lies and deceptions that we must do it. I don't think so. I think we just do it. You do it. It's what I tried to say it in the last LDR that I've done. We do the actions, but he has done the works already. We are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which he has created that we should walk in them. He has done the works. We just walk in them. We do the thing. We do whatever needs to be done. We say the words that need to be said, and the power that holds us together comes through and does the work in the other person. So, it's really very encouraging, It's not, wump yourself up and make yourself strong. It's just, have a look at who we are. Have a real look at what you are. See clearly that you're a bundle of protons and neutrons held together by Christ. And all the strength that you need is in you already. And you just act on that basis. It's interesting, isn't it? We lose everything by lack of faith. We lose everything by unbelief. That's really the truth of it. We lose everything by unbelief. We simply don't believe reality. And so we're left with nothingness. And no wonder we're scared, No wonder we're nervous. No wonder we aren't quite sure of ourselves. Because we're believing in something that doesn't exist. There is no us apart from the person that is part of Christ and happens to have this conglomeration of nuclei around it. And that's what we are. So our strength is him. And of course, you know, the whole Bible holds together, because it is not I that live, but Christ that lives within me. That's what Paul was saying. Our problem is we think, oh yes, we're really alive, you know, but Christ is there as well. It's not. He says, it's not I that live. It's Christ that lives within me. I just use this terminology that we human beings have got used to, that I live, this life I live, but I don't live it. It's Christ that lives within me. So it's a blessing, you know, that God has given us. Let us pray.